Hello, everyone. We will give it another minute or two. We've got lots of people flooding in, so I want everyone to get in here before we get started. But a little bit of housekeeping. Welcome. If you have any chat, obviously, feel free to chat in the chat box. Let us know where you're attending from, and any, things that you want to chat about during the presentation. If you have any questions, please keep those in the Q&A so that we can attend to them. Sometimes questions do tend to get lost in the chat box. So yeah, let us know where you're attending from. We love to see where everyone is from. We have Jenny Heinzen York today with us from Currey & Co. And we're very excited for everything that she's got to tell us about lighting and the wonderful world of it. Freezing in Wisconsin. It's gonna hit everybody soon enough. Maybe not Jenny. You're in Atlanta, so it stays pretty warm all year round.
We've had a cold week, so we're getting it too. Not Wisconsin style, but our version of.
Okay. Working from Naples. That sounds really nice right about now, for sure. Some sunshine. Okay, we're at about 1:02. So as people continue to come on in, I'm sure that we will have more people for the next few minutes, but for the sake of time, we will go ahead and get started. So Jenny, if you would like to introduce yourself a little bit more and then take it away, we are ready to go.
Thank you, Lauren. Hi, everybody. I'm glad to have you here. My name is Jenny Heinzen York. I'm the Vice President of Marketing at Currey & Company. I've been with Currey for about 5 years, but have spent really the entirety of my career in the home furnishings industry, including 20 years at Home Accents Today and Furniture Today magazines. I was the editor of Home Accents Today for 10 years. Then I left to come to America's Mart in Atlanta, where I was for a couple of years managing the home marketing division there. And now happily at Currey and learning and teaching all about the wonderful world of lighting. It's also a very complicated world. So we've got a pretty dense hour coming up. I expect you'll be taking lots of notes. I can't share the slides, but if there's any particular individual slides or information bits, feel free to reach out to me. I'll share my email address at the end, and I'll be happy to share those with you. I just can't share the whole deck because we use this for CEUs as well. All right, let me get the right screen going here. Assuming you can all see my big monitor.
Yep, you're good to go.
Great. All right, so we're going to dive right in. I'm going to start out with just a bit of an introduction to Currey in general, and then we'll really get into the nitty-gritty lighting details. So who Currey is, if you're not familiar with us, we are a lighting and home furnishings company. We are based in Atlanta. We are second generation family owned, very proud of that and plan to maintain that status. But we also have international offices. So we own our own factory in the Philippines. We have trading offices in China, Hong Kong, and India. So we have Currey employees really all over the world, but Atlanta is our home base. We warehouse in Atlanta. Everything ships directly from here in the Southeast. We cover many different product categories: lighting, accent furniture, upholstery, accessories, and outdoor furniture and accessories. Obviously, today we're going to be really focused on the lighting piece, but we do have more of a whole home offering than this presentation may indicate. So some of what we're known for, we're really known for our use of natural materials. So whether that's natural shell, iron, stone, glass, rattan, abaca, natural brass, all sorts of natural materials. Anything that we can kind of find and reinvent and put into a home decor product is really a specialty of ours, particularly if we can use recycled materials. We really focus on our hand craftsmanship. We work with artisans, again, all over Asia, and really look for the best factories that can do the kind of handwork that we demand. On our chandeliers in particular, we specialize in multi-layer hand-applied finishes that you can really, when you see one in person, you can understand the quality because you can really see the depth of it. These are not painted finishes. They're leafed and hand rubbed and very, very detailed. Another thing that's unique to us is that all of our designs are original to us. So we have an in-house design team, and in Atlanta, 5 designers in Atlanta, and then several overseas as well, but they're all Currey employees, and nearly all of our designs are ones from scratch that come from the design team. One thing to know about Currey, especially as you're sourcing us for lighting projects, is that we don't typically merchandise in really large families. So some of our better selling fixtures will have different size or finish or a coordinating sister piece, but for the most part, they stand alone, or they may come in at 1 size or 2 sizes, but which is different than most of our competitors and our peers who may have 1 design, 6 finishes, 4 sizes. We don't do that because we really like to keep the diversity and the depth of our line. So we don't tend to do huge collections. So if you see a piece, love it, wish you had it in silver, probably we don't, but it's always worth an ask. But it's just a different merchandising approach that allows us to keep our line very diverse. Another thing that's really important about us is how critical sustainability is for Currey. We, of course, always do use responsibly sourced materials. Many of them are recycled, but also our warehouse processes, our manufacturing processes, and very importantly to us, our social responsibility to our employees and our factory employees overseas. This is something that's very, very critical to what we do, and we all really live by these mantras of being socially responsible and environmentally responsible. Creative advantage. Again, we have our own in-house design team, and we work with factories that in many cases are exclusive to us. We introduce twice a year in April and October at the spring and fall High Point markets. Those introductions will range from 200 to 400 pieces per season. We discontinue products at a quick rate too, to be able to accommodate that kind of level of growth. So our line is always changing, always diversifying, always new and fresh. And we work very hard at not standing still from a design standpoint. Outside of our interior or internal design team, we also have some design collaborations where we work on a licensed basis. So some names you may know, Bunny Williams, Marjorie Skoras is a LA interior designer who did this collection that you see right here on the right. Sasha Bykoff, pretty well known. Aviva Stanoff has her own home design line. So in many cases, these aren't necessarily celebrity names like you see with a lot of licensing collections. So we will only license with someone if they're really bringing a design perspective to us that we can't create ourselves and really fits a niche that we want to target. So we're not going after the name as much as we're going after the look and what they can bring to diversify our range. Okay, so that's the Currey spiel. I'll jump into the types of lighting fixtures. This is going to start out a little elementary, but hopefully as we go through the presentation, you'll sort of see where I'm going with it. Obviously, chandeliers. So at Currey, this is what we're known for. We have about 600 chandeliers in our line. They can run from classic to bold to contemporary to very coastal. But overall, the look is going to be boutique, unique, special. We have over 100 finishes in our line. And as I mentioned before, they're all hand-applied, multi-layered finishes. Any kind of crystals and beading. This is another nice differentiator for us. When we ship you a chandelier, it will come fully dressed. In almost every case, there's a handful of exceptions where the pieces would break otherwise. But so when you get that crate, it is fully assembled. You'll be able to lift it right out and put it straight into the ceiling without any work on your part. Obviously, these are all hardwired fixtures. We certainly recommend professional installation, and your lighting professionals and installers are certainly going to be very good friends of yours, because some of these pieces are hard and they're big. So all of our pieces come with a ceiling canopy, chains or rods, which are finished to match the pieces, of course. You can always buy extra chain on or rod from any of our chandeliers. They're wired for 13 feet, so even if they only include 6 or 8 feet of chain, we can get you more to really drop it as low as you want. Nearly all are slope ceiling compatible, and they are all certified by either UL or ETL. So safety is another area that's very important to us. Pendants are one of our most popular lighting categories. These are typically single light designs that won't have a whole lot of ornamentation like crystals or beads. These you see used often in solos or multiples. These are great over kitchens and islands, and we have ones that are super tiny, a couple inches to several feet in diameter. Just like our chandeliers, our pendant fixtures all have adjustable chain, wire, rods, links. They can all go on slope ceilings as well, and the links will depend on which design you pick. It's hard to tell on this screen, but that piece on the far left is really big. It's close to 4 feet tall. But the little glass one beside it is very small. So I couldn't quite scale it right on the slide to show it, but to really show the range of materials and what we do and scale. We're increasingly investing in our semi-flush fixture collection. Semi-flushes are, for a house that doesn't have a high ceiling but still wants some sort of statement or signature light. These work really well in guest rooms, but also just in older homes that don't have a high ceiling but still could use something dramatic. We get a lot of requests from interior designers to create more of these and more interesting ones. So we're investing in that pretty significantly. Another take on semi-flush fixtures that we offer, what we call these convertible fixtures. So here, this particular piece can hang as a chandelier with or without the canopy, or be mounted directly to the ceiling as a semi-flush. So we try to build that adaptability in any of the semi-flush pieces that we think will also work as a chandelier. And then flush mounts. These are the ones that go straight onto the ceiling, of course. So you see these in low ceilings, hallways, bathrooms, closets, guest spaces. And again, in the Currey way, wide range of materials, colors, shapes, all of, nice little representation of sort of what we do in our bigger lighting line, but in a smaller format that works for rooms that won't ever use a semi-flush or a chandelier. We also have what we call our multi-drop pendant collection. So this is a really interesting line that's full of options. You see on this slide, there are 7 canopy shades. We've since added an 8th one that is a slimmer linear design that just has one row of lights. So you see from the far left, there's just the little guy all the way up to the big 36 light round, which is 33 inches in diameter. Each one, you can select a shade to go with. We have 23 shade options now, and all sorts of materials that we'll look at on the next slide. But what's cool about these is they're sold with 10 feet of wire, so you can adjust these yourself at installation. We can also wire them to 20 feet if you prefer. So these could really be greatly used in a tall foyer or around a spiral staircase. We see these a lot in hotel lobbies as well, but a very fun, customizable, and you can really sort of create your own light fixture with this program that we have. These are some of the shade options. We've added a number since this picture was taken, but whether it's natural shell, natural selenite, pierced metal, antique mirror, cut crystal. This guy right here is the solid alabaster that is absolutely beautiful. There's art glass beads. This is a copper mercury glass, bone china, lots of different options here. Wall sconces are another big area of importance for us at Currey and Company. We have about 200 of them. Again, these are going to be hardwired to the wall. We have only a couple that don't hardwire. Some do have coordinating chandeliers, so that's easy to figure out on our website when you're shopping around. Many of them are rated for damp locations, so are fine to use in bathrooms. And we also have a number that are ADA compliant if space constraints are part of your design. And again, the range of materials, finish scale, sizes, styles, sort of the Currey way. Table and desk lamps. These are really important, of course, as decorative objects, but in older homes that may not be able to sustain a whole lot of hardwired lighting, a lot of homes can really depend on the portable and the plug-in lighting. We have a very deep, diverse range of lamps, table lamps, desk lamps, and floor lamps. And floor lamps can also help fill that void in a house where it's hard to wire for sconces, or for whatever reason, a ceiling fixture won't work. So then you can get some of the light directing down. All right, so now we'll get into the much more technical stuff. The main types of light that you need to consider as an interior designer are natural light, ambient light, task light, accent light, and architectural light. Given our area of expertise, we're really going to focus on ambient, task, and accent, but we will talk about natural light quite a bit. I don't get into the architectural light a whole lot in this presentation, really at all, other than to advise on some areas where it could be used. But architectural lighting will be your can lights, it'll be cove lights, it could be under cabinet. So things that are much more less decorative, I should say, but tend to be very functional, and any good lighting design is going to integrate architectural lighting for sure. I strongly recommend that if you're not a lighting design expert, that you find a good lighting showroom partner in your local area. They are the experts in lighting, so whether you actually source the decorative pieces from them or that you go direct to the vendors is entirely up to you, but they can help you with how many cans you might need in a room, or how to install a cove light, or some over cabinet, under cabinet. They're really good at helping you calculate the amount of light that a space needs and making sure that the functional piece is met just as well as the decorative piece, which is going to be your natural area of expertise. You'll hear me talk a lot about the importance of layering light. So that'll be combining the ambient light, the accent light, and the task light. And those sort of go from least bright to brightest, and we'll work through each of those. But any of your key rooms should really have elements of all three of these, ideally. Color temperature, this comes up a lot now that all the changes have been made and incandescent light bulbs are generally not available or harder to source. This is sort of the whole range of the color scale. You're going to live in the 2700 to 4000 range, and really 2700 is going to be your sweet spot. So that's as close to the incandescent light that we all are used to and grew up with. 3000K is considered daylight comparable, and then 4000 or more, you're really looking at very cold, very task-driven light. You would probably only use that if you had a real specific task, maybe a craft room or something where really strong light is necessary, but you're going to want to live in that 2700 to 3000 range for the most part. All right, so I said we'll talk a tiny bit about natural light because this really does impact your lighting design and how much artificial light you're going to need to supplement with. So as you're looking at a space, consider, where is the natural light coming through? Is it coming through directly as sunlight? Is it sort of dappled? Is it coming through even from another room? How much is there? How many windows are there? What's coming through the ceiling potentially? What direction is it coming? So you may want to watch where you place the TV, for example, if you know that sunlight's always going to be coming in at a certain angle when it's a prime TV watching moment. Does the amount of light vary during the day? Like you may be blinded in the morning, but it gets kind of dark in the afternoons when the sun's moved across the sky. What are some seasonal variations? And really, how does it affect the functionality of the room? Lighting is decorative and beautiful, but the reality is it's a function too. We don't just turn on lights because they look pretty. We turn them on because we need to see when it's dark. So considering the functionality is always something that needs to be part of your interior design and certainly your lighting design plans. So I like to show this room because obviously they're getting a ton of light from the ceiling and it's beautiful, but you can imagine that when it gets dark outside, the entire ambiance of this space changes. So they've addressed that with these really large arc lamps there. And I suspect there's quite a bit of architectural lighting in this room as well. But again, considering the difference between day and night and how you need to account for that. Talking about that is the lack of natural light. So you also need to consider how dark does it really get in your space every evening. We encourage designers to go look at their projects after dark if possible and get a good understanding of what you're sort of working with, how much you have to make up for. If you're in a bright city, you may not need as much kind of safety type light because you're getting some light that just comes in. If you're out in the country, it can get real dark. So there may be some safety issues you want to address, or just certainly plenty of access to switches and lamps to make the rooms accessible when you're first lighting them. Are there any glare things that you need to deal with? So if you've got a big window and a big sort of supernova chandelier, is that going to cause a glare inside? So again, just take a look at what it looks like at night and see if there might be something you can address so you don't get an unwelcome surprise when the first time they turn on their lights at night. So here you see the same room, daytime versus nighttime. I just think this is a beautiful space and design, so I like to show it, but obviously it's a totally different atmosphere, and you can get away with the big single light in this case because you're getting so much light from the city and from all the windows. In other cases, that you're not going to have that benefit, so you'll need to supplement with more architectural light. All right, so on to the more real core decorative and functional pieces of lighting. Ambient light. Ambient light is sort of just the general light in a room. It's really the bulk of the room. So whether it's the overhead fixture, whether it's the natural light coming through, it's sort of your baseline level of lighting that you really have to have or you're going to have given the nature of the space. It helps sort of eliminate the heavy contrast. It's pretty diffuse. It spreads over a lot of space. It's fine for basic activities, but it's not going to work for reading or for any kind of task like cooking or crafting. So it's just, again, your sort of base level of light. In a perfect world that has dimmers on it, and I'm going to say that 20 times in this presentation, dimmers are really important. Anywhere you can put a dimmer, do it. It's never going to be badly received because adding that extra layerability will allow, instead of having one bright light on top, you could still turn on your beautiful chandelier and then, but not really be using it as a light source just to light it, because then you can dim it down and use your other layered light to really create the beauty in the room. But you don't want that gorgeous chandelier to disappear either. And then accent lighting. So accent lighting can add extra dimensions to a space. It can add drama. It can often be used where you want to direct attention. So it may be art lighting, whatever you want to be the focal point of the room. It can just be decorative. Sometimes the light itself is beautiful and is part of the design, as you can kind of see here with the way they lit this stairwell. So here the accents are on the backs of the bookshelves. So that's the part of the room that they want to draw the most attention to. These interesting objects here on the right, or their books on the left. So accenting those just draws the eye in and tells the person entering your room where you want to focus. And they can also be directional. So here you have a bar, and the lighting effect of that bar is really where your eye immediately goes to. And so it's just foundational to the design of that space and how you sort of navigate through it. Also, even just the lights behind these planters that help draw attention there. And your task lighting. So this is your more direct illumination for a specific area where the tasks are taking place. So you will heavily use tasks in home office, of course, kitchen, dining bar, bathroom, maybe a makeup light, a laundry room, a craft room. Again, these are the areas where you're performing a specific something. And usually a task, but in the dining room, you want to sort of focus the light directly onto the table. So think about light that is highly directed and goes into a specific area. That's your task light. Again, home offices and this looks like a crafting room here on the left. Those are great areas for those, but certainly kitchen. So here you see the pendants on the ceiling that are pointing the light down, but then there are also the task lamps to the left that are adding, really focused light on the task at hand. And task lighting, again, think about the trajectory of the light. So if you're going to do something like she's got here on the right, you want to make sure that it's a fixture that directs the light downward. Many fixtures, Currey fixtures included, will be constructed so the light bounces off the ceiling. That's not going to work in a task context. So you really want something that focuses the light down. The dark shades in this case help do that. All right, let's stroll through room by room. All right, so in these little illustrations that you're going to see, the yellow is your ambient light, the orange is your accent light, and the purple pink is your task lights. So in a living room, your ambient light could be provided by integrated ceiling fixtures, which would be your can lights or your cove lights, usually up in the ceiling in these cases. Could also be chandeliers, semi-flush, mount, pendant, whatever sort of other primary ceiling fixture you're using. Your accent light in here could be table and floor lamps, could also be some architectural light if you wanted to highlight a particular nice feature. Maybe there's a tray ceiling you want to draw out. Your wall sconces, which will light the wall, so light the wall around it, but sometimes the wall sconces themselves are so beautiful that you want to really highlight those. Or maybe there's a piece of art that you want to focus the light toward. So those are your accent lights. And then your task in this case would be a table or a floor lamp. So some tips for lighting a living room. Layers of light and the intensity and being able to adapt them with dimmers really allow you to add drama and dimension to the space. So don't be afraid of multiple light sources. More is always going to be better. They can always be dimmed, they can always be turned off, but having the ability to layer in many different things is going to add so much depth and drama to a space that it's hard to go wrong with too much. What are the focal points in the room? So figure that out and use the light to direct toward that. Don't concentrate the light all toward the ceiling. That tends to be a kind of rookie mistake. You put the one big fixture up there, and again, it loses a lot of the shadows, it loses a lot of the dimension. So you need to be looking at wall lighting, lighting that's sitting on your tabletops, as well as the ceiling. We talked about dimmers, three-way bulbs whenever possible in your lamps. They just really add to the functionality and the beauty of the space. Lampshades. Lampshades are really fun, and there are all kinds of fun ones coming onto the marketplace. Just be aware that if you get a dark lampshade or one that's got a metal foil on the inside, that it's dramatically going to impact the amount of light that lamp gives off. So keep that in mind. Doesn't mean don't use them by any means. It means just design around it and make sure that it's functional enough. Otherwise, everyone's unhappy, even if it looks great. Consistency of color, whatever color you choose, whether it's 2700 or 3000, and 2700 is again going to be your sweet spot. Make sure they're all the same. It's really easy to go buy the wrong light bulb and really throw off the whole lighting space with something as silly as a couple hundred degrees Kelvin that can completely change the way your room looks. So this is a nice example of layered light here. You've got the little can spotlights up on the top. We're not seeing the entire room here, of course, but the little task light on the desk, and then a reading light, and then the little cove stuff on the inset up here, which are nice. So you get a very layered, dramatic, beautiful aspect, but it's also very functional when you need to do some work or you want to read. This room we have in the don't do file. This one just doesn't read right to me at all. The ceiling fixture is way too small. It needs to be bigger. It also looks like when it gets dark outside, you close those drapes, that it's going to get really dark in that room. And the lamps that they've chosen are so task oriented that they're only going to direct the light directly onto that sofa. And the little sconce on the side is going to do some up and down, but it's not going to be nearly enough functional light. So this one could really benefit from some inset lighting up around the ceiling, and certainly a bigger fixture, and probably a floor lamp or other sconces to help illuminate it better. There's that pretty little library again. So here you see that they also have sconces in this room. And then here's just a nice blend of, they've got the big dramatic fixture, and then a task lamp and a large table lamp. These things don't always have to be symmetrical. You can have some fun and you can experiment with them, especially because your tasks may not need to be taking place in the same places. So, use that and don't be afraid of the asymmetry in a situation like that. All right, onto the kitchen. So in the kitchen, your ambient light is going to be from your cans, usually, and your flush mount, semi-flush fixtures. So we just have chandeliers in here as task light. Honestly, in many cases, the chandelier is also going to be your ambient light. So chandeliers typically aren't great task, but I think she's going for the pendants here as well, which can focus down. Your accents might be in cabinet lighting, if you have like glass cabinets that you want to highlight, and then your task will be the food prep areas and your under cabinet there where you may be dicing or measuring. So anywhere where you need to have more focused attention and light for safety. All right, so some kitchen lighting tips. Choose lighting that complements or directly contrasts your plumbing fixtures. So they either need to coordinate or be completely different. Because metal finishes, there's so much variation that getting everything brass, your brass could be multi different shades of brass, and they're not going to look great together. So make sure that you're looking at that lighting fixture and comparing it to your sinks and your faucets, and ensuring that they're either complementary enough or different enough that it doesn't look like you're trying to match and missing the boat there. Flexibility, anything, that's dimmers. You've heard me say it before, dimmers, anything that you can put on a dimmer will be really nice and functional. The under cabinet make great night lights if you can turn them down some. That's how we use them here in our house. And when we're cooking and need the under cabinet, it's great to have it bright, but it's also great to be able to turn it down so it's not impacting the bedrooms. Remember that you're in a kitchen, and kitchens can get oily and greasy, so look for fixtures that can be cleaned, that aren't going to need solvent. Solvent is going to ruin the finish on a lot of nicer fixtures that have the leafing finishes. So make sure they're reachable and that it's something that can be cleaned, especially if you're directly over a cooking space where you may have some more grease type stuff coming up. Color temperature, you're going to see that in every room. Make sure you're using damp rated fixtures if you're near a steaming area. Again, this doesn't really come into play too much in a kitchen, but maybe directly over a cooktop. Damp rated is fine. They do not need to be wet rated in this case, but it's just something to keep in mind. Another nice thing that you're seeing a lot more of is motion sensors. So in a pantry or a storage area, so you got your hands full or you've got meat hands and you need to walk in, throw something away, having a light that automatically switches on when you walk into that space where your trash can may be, for example, then it's just nice to not have to always switch things on and off, particularly in a kitchen. And remember that your cabinet and finishes and your paint colors are going to matter. So as far as how much light you need. So a dark finished room is going to need a lot more light than a white or a very light kitchen because you're not going to get the reflectivity effect. So as you're working in a kitchen, and this is the one room where I really go pretty in depth on specifics here because I think it's the one that is easiest to get wrong. So here's some sort of baseline rules to start with. You need to figure out how much light you're going to need and how high you're going to need to hang that. So if you have a kitchen with a high ceiling or a really big island, make sure you're using a substantial enough pendant, at least over 20 inches. Bigger is always going to be better than smaller in any kind of dining space. Generally in lighting design, bigger is usually better, but especially so in the kitchen. You can hang them up to 30 inches apart and make sure they're at least 30 inches above the island. And 30 to 36 is kind of the sweet spot. So you're still getting functionality and you get to see the light, but it's not impeding your line of sight when you're standing and not seated. Smaller islands, multiples work really well in smaller islands, but then you would want to go with smaller ones, smaller actual pendants. So 10 to 20 inches in that case. You can also do little tiny fixtures, the little minis, and create sort of the same visual impact as a chandelier. Just make sure you're doing them in the multiples of odd numbers. And we'll see some examples of those. And a good rule of thumb is to multiply the square footage of the kitchen by 30 to 40 to determine the total lumen requirements. And you can figure out lumens. We include all that information on our chandeliers, but light bulbs will include what their lumen output is. Lumen is the amount of light that's coming out of a light source. So 30 to 40 is the sort of what you would need for the whole room. And then for workspaces, you need to take that and then multiply it by 70 or 80. So in my example kitchen here, say it's a 300 square foot kitchen, you'd need about 11,000 lumens total. And of that, 4,500 of the lumens should be focused onto the countertop, assuming it's a 60-foot countertop. And I totally made up these numbers, but kind of gives you the idea that you want to have quite a bit of light, but a lot of it, nearly half, more than a third, is going to be focused on your actual work areas. So this is a nice kitchen with a lot of layered light. You have the pretty decorative fixture up top. It's not really performing any function other than just some ambient light because your function light is coming from those cans. The under cabinet is especially cool in here, and then you get those pretty accents with the wall sconces. Here you see the use of two pendants, pretty in-cabinet lighting here. You get like nice natural light in this room, and then the under cabinet really provides a nice, just a nice look. This room might be a little light on task light because of the nature of those chandeliers and that they're not directed straight down, but they do have a ton of can lights. So I think they've addressed that in a pretty nice way. So we talked about bigger is better. You can see that here. especially the one on the left, those are big sconces, but they look great in that space. And again, the overhead fixtures are there to provide drama. They're not just for function. That may be their least important thing, is the function. That's where you want the eye to go. That's the statement piece. So don't be afraid of making those big and being ambitious with those. Some houses aren't really well equipped for having a big ceiling fixture in the kitchen. So these extendable sconces can help meet that need and still get some overhead type light without having to actually install to the ceiling. So whether the ceiling's too tall, or it can't be wired, or it's so sloped that it won't work, or many fixtures that will have slope limits on how many they can do, this is a good way to work around that. Okay, so here in the don't file, the little line of minis could be great over that table. It just doesn't work with having the 3 line over the big island. So in this situation, it needs to be an either or. And you could still do a single linear fixture over the dining table, but I think the minis here just don't work because it's confusing to the eye, I think, to have that many lights hanging out of the ceiling. And the 3 and the whole big line of them just feels like too much. So use that technique, but use it sparingly and don't use it twice in the same room. Okay, on to the bathroom. So here your integrated ceiling fixtures, your can lights, your chandeliers, that's where your ambient and general light's going to come from. You may have accent light in your bathroom if you've got some really pretty architectural feature. Don't see this in all baths, but it can certainly be used. And then your task light is going to be your vanity lights. That could be the bars, bathroom bars. It could be pendants that are focusing light onto a bathtub, for example. Under cabinet lighting, if appropriate, and not all bathrooms have cabinets that will accommodate that. Again, make sure that damp is going to be important anywhere in the bathroom. If you're actually installing in the shower, it needs to be wet resistant. So some tips in the bathroom. Ideally, for the best light, you're going to have light on the sides and on the top. That is the most flattering to the face and allows best illumination of the face. That's not always going to be practical or doable, but that's sort of a best practice. If you have to choose, the sides are more important than the top. Remember that the code here, it's really important for safety issues. You've got to use damp rated fixtures in the bathroom. It's just not worth the safety risk. It's also could mean that the fixtures aren't going to wear right. If they get steam on them, it might damage the finish. And it's just not something you want to deal with. So really pay attention to that when you're in a bath space. Indirect lighting is going to be better in a bathroom. None of us like when there's a big bright light shining directly on our face. It's not flattering. So watch out for that. Watch out for glare and shadows. Watch out for reflections in a mirror, because sometimes if you have a really bright fixture, it can be reflecting in the mirror and be really distracting and cause a lot of glare. We talked about with the kitchen, note the color of your fixtures and your walls. And if they're really dark, you may need to overcompensate with the lighting to get enough in a space that's going to absorb the light like that. And if you're working in a small bathroom and you have some big sconces, just be mindful of the fact that you're not going to smash your elbows into something if you're having to work in a really tight space. So here's some examples of some nice baths. So we talked about the lighting from all directions. The one on the left does have some can lights. So you're getting the upper light and then the light from the sides. And same thing on the right. It just feels very layered, and especially in the one on the right, you get that beautiful architectural light. So where the fixtures, in this case, the sconces, are nearly purely decorative. They are providing some illumination, but they're not providing any of the functional light. It's just to make the room look lovely. Some more examples here. So you've got the chandelier or the pendant, you've got the sconces. I suspect there's some little cans up there that are floating that reflection up there, but that may be coming off the sconce. The point is it's layered. It's not just a single piece or just the sconces and the main fixture. I think this under cabinet lighting on this bath on the right is a really cool use, and you don't see that very often. I think it's beautiful, and with all the big time investments people are making in these fabulous huge bathrooms, that feels like a logical place to add some lighting. So something to explore. Onto the dining room. So you're going to have of course, you're going to have the chandeliers, the dining room. You'll probably also have sconces. You may have some lamps. Task is less important in a dining room space for the most part, but if you need it, that can also be brought on with some directed pendants. It could also possibly be your buffet lamps, depending on what you're doing there. But again, task is not really the goal in dining room. It's more the beautiful ambient space. We see a lot of dining rooms where there's one great big, really bright, beautiful fixture, and that's the lighting. Maybe you've got some buffet lamps, but you're not trying to light the ceiling. You want to light the room. You especially want to light the table. So think about how you do that in a surrounding space. So sconces work really well in dining spaces. Lamps on a buffet or a sideboard are really effective. Maybe even some architectural lighting, depending on the ceiling treatment. But if you're going to use sconces, make sure that if it's a tight space, that when you pull out the chairs, that you're not going to run into them. It's easy to do, and some sconces can be pretty deep. So in that case, using an ADA compliant sconce that's only a couple inches deep may work better, because then you run less risk of someone crashing into the thing. And then dimmers, of course. I don't want dimmers in every room, but you definitely want them in the dining room. There's some fun dining spaces here. I'm going to start to move along quickly here because it looks like I'm getting low on time. But what you're noticing here is the same themes. Is look at this supplemental light. You've got, the decorative piece, but then all the layering. It's what's really creating the beauty of the rooms, and you can make perfect fixture and furniture selections, but if the lighting is off, it's just going to be an unsatisfactory experience for everyone. If that were the only chandelier in the room, or that's the only light source, you're probably going to be really disappointed because it's not bright enough to make it a functional room. So you sometimes have to design around the actual light limitations of a large fixture too. And if you need the fixture to really be a dominant light source, confirm what the lumen output is on that and make sure that the one you're picking, even if it's perfect in every other way, if it's not bright enough, your clients are going to hate it. More layered lighting. These pictures are always so fun. I always love looking at them and just seeing all the different ways that designers can be so creative with what they do. Okay, into the bedroom. You're of course going to always have probably some sort of overhead light. That may be cans. You don't see that as often in bedrooms. Could be your chandelier dependents, a light kit on a ceiling fan, maybe a flush mount depending on the size of the bedroom. Your accents are going to be your lamps for the most part, maybe architectural lighting, and then you might have some reading lamps or some little directed sconces over the bed directly for reading. So when it comes to the bedroom, you need to understand with your clients, what do they do in that bedroom? What are their sleeping preferences? How their habits? Does one go to bed before the other one does? So that you can build customized lighting solutions for rooms that have more than one occupant. Dimmable is really important in the lighting space or bedroom space as well. Get as wide a range as you can here, because if one is sleeping and you want to dim down the other lights and they've still got some function or safety, then you're not going to disrupt the other partner. Look up. You're in bed, and sometimes fixtures aren't super pretty from underneath, directly underneath. Sometimes they're very glary if there's not a diffuser on them. So consider the underside of the fixture, especially in a bedroom where you're most likely to be laying down and looking up, so you'll see inside of it. And then keep in mind if they're going to use the TV in the bedroom, and make sure that you're not creating glare with an overhead fixture or another fixture that may be positioned where it's going to capture the light from the TV. This one's nice on the left because you get the beautiful sort of chandelier effect for sort of ambient light, but you've got that pretty little wall or arm sconce for task. On the right, my don't image, I do not like that chandelier stuck in the cage like that. That's just weird, I think. But the other thing to keep in mind is that they've got the lamps up against those big mirrors. So you're really more than doubling the light output of each of those lamps. So that just feels very glary and kind of aggressive in a room that you want to be more calming. Architectural light really plays into this particular room, but I like the use of the pendants. I'm loving the use of pendants in general beside beds versus lamps. I just think it's so pretty. It also frees up all that tabletop space for your pretty decorative objects and your stack of books and whatever else you need to have over there. But I like the idea of freeing up the space, but I also think it adds so much dimension to the room to coming off the ceiling like that. And as you can see here, you can do that and still have a prominent main ceiling fixture. Just by doing the sconce or the pendants on the side does not mean that you have eliminated the ability to do another sort of primary fixture in the center. You just have to sort of be mindful and make sure they're not too alike and that they're performing different functions. Home office, very task oriented in here. I'm going to move through this pretty quickly. So again, light from the ceiling, but really you're going to be focusing on your task here. Maybe you've got art you want to feature, and that could be some of the accent lighting, or maybe they're bookshelves and you could work the shelf lighting in as well. As you're designing a home office space, really learn from your clients what they're going to be doing in the space. How do they use this? Will they be using it at night? If so, how does this impact a computer screen? That may impact where you put your lights. If you're going to have reflectivity or chandeliers, may be glary. So keep that in mind if it is going to be used at night. Shadows, task lighting can cause a lot of shadows because it is so directed. So do you have a solution to work around that? So you can have the task light that's beaming down, but maybe you've got a can above that's adding some light from here to take away that hard shadow that the task is going to cause. Consider adjustable position fixtures for maximum control. That's your task light. So you'll see in the next slide too. Sometimes you can even see it in chandeliers. So that could be the armed sconce that you can move, or it's got the shade that will pivot so you can put it exactly where you want that light directed. So yeah, the chandeliers on the left, little pendants, they actually, contract or go up. Those are not Currey chandeliers, but I like that idea a lot in a task space. You kind of pull it up when you need it, pull it down as you prefer. Over on the right, just the beautiful daylight that they've supplemented it with task lights that are also doubling as a really nice design fixture that are focusing a ton of light directly down onto the workspace. Entryways and hallways. I'm going to move quickly through here. So remember, as you're doing these, that these spaces are meant to be viewed from the inside and the outside. So just because it looks perfect on the inside, it may look strange when you see it out the window or out the front door. So make sure that you've centered it so it works from both of those views. Smart sensors work really well in these spaces. So when you come in your front door, some sort of light that automatically comes on. It's a great safety feature. Task lighting and accent lighting will help sort of lower the drama of the space. So for a day-to-day function, when you're not going to have on your big foyer chandelier, just having some functional lights, lamps, or sconces can really be effective as a safety and just a visually nice tool without having to light the entire potentially formal space. Make sure you're leaving enough room for humans. So, and always hang with at least 7 feet of clearance. So even if you have a tall human, nobody's gonna crash into these. It's also, especially when in a hallway, lighting the way is important. So about every 10 feet is the rule for hallways if you're gonna put sconces or flush mounts. So if you have a long hallway that you're trying to illuminate, keep that number in mind so you've got enough safety and enough illumination to get them down the hallway. And if you have a 2-story foyer, we talked about how in a bedroom you have to look up. In a 2-story foyer, you often are going to look down. Sometimes you don't want to see the guts of that fixture, so make sure you know what it looks like from the top, and that again it's shaded or diffused or in some way is attractive enough that looking inside it is not going to be a turnoff. Some examples of hallways. Okay, space analysis. How are they going to use the space? You need to understand the basic functions and tasks, secondary functions and tasks. Maybe the kid uses it in the afternoon, but it's primarily mom and dad's office during the day. Are there safety considerations? And of course, the aesthetic considerations. Who's going to use the space? Do you have multi-generations? Do you have an older population? Typically, older populations are going to need much more supplemental light. I don't know the whole science of it, but your eyes do not absorb as much light as you get older. So the need for accommodating for that in a multi-generational home or in a home with older residents is very real. So some of these numbers can often skew up when you're dealing with that population. When is this going to be used? Is this a special occasion room or is this an everyday room? Is this nighttime, daytime, both? Then you want to look at the natural light like we talked about. We talked about going to see it at night. How do you adjust the artificial light to compensate? That is your job. And is what happens in that room different at night than during the day? And does that change the lighting requirements? Then you want to look at the space. You're going to look at the ceiling height here. You're going to look at the power sources and the switches and figure out what's wireable. Do you need to add more? Do you need to add switches? Do you need to add dimmers? Do you need to add more outlets? Kind of work at the outside and work your way in as you're creating your overall lighting design. Remember that you want to light the walls and the furnishings, not the floor. So you don't want things just directing down. So light that can reflect off of the walls is going to add a nice ambiance to the entire space and create beautiful ambient light. Again, what sort of activities? Add your task and accent lighting. Do you need art lighting? Do you need spotlights? There's again, the layered approach, sort of think about what it could possibly need all the rooms. The technical things. Do you need ease of access? Are you going to be able to change these bulbs? Are there automation options? Certainly dimmers, glare can fall into that. Color and temperature, we've talked a lot about that today. And then you get to the stuff that you guys are probably most good at, which is the size of the fixture. Like, you know what size lighting fixture needs to go there, and you can pick out the style. So in a lot of ways, what's sort of ironic in this is that the part that comes most naturally to you, picking out the perfect fixture for a space, is in a lot of ways the easy part when it comes to lighting design, because there's so many other factors that have to be considered. Certainly look at codes, and if it needs to be damp rated, how big does it need to be? Of course, how much does it cost? That's always going to be a big thing because chandeliers can certainly be expensive. But as we talked about before, keeping in mind that the amount of light that's going to come out of the chandelier and the decorative piece is really important for you to consider, because that's what you're going to design around to develop a comprehensive lighting plan. All right, I'm at 2 o'clock on the dot, so it's a lot to consider. I know I whiz through this. And again, if anyone wants to reach out to me, I'll share my email address on the next screen. But a solid lighting plan is going to go so far to a great design. It is going to make the furniture and art and rugs you select look that much more beautiful. But it's not easy, and I don't want you to take it lightly. And sort of a lot of people consider lighting as like sort of a last step. It really needs to be foundational as you're creating a room design, because there's so many factors that can influence it, and there's so many ways it can be done incorrectly or unsatisfactorily, and will just sort of demean the whole rest of the project. Again, there are a lot of professional lighting designers out there. Your local lighting showrooms are great resources for that kind of expertise and advice. And certainly talk to your vendors too and your reps. And, there's a lot of good information to be had out there, but hopefully I've shared some today and that you all got a little bit out of here. So here's me again, Jay Heinzen at curreyco.com. Reach out anytime. Hope to see you guys. We'll be in Dallas, Atlanta, and Las Vegas in January. So if anybody's on the road, please stop in and say hello.
Yes, and you should stop in. All of their showrooms are the most fun to be in and to look at. Lighting showrooms are always so amazing, and Currey does not disappoint you guys. If you've never, been into one of their spaces, definitely, if you come upon them,
thank you.
Check it out. Well, thank you so much, Jenny. This was amazing. So much information. I hope everybody, learned a little something from this, and we will send out the recording to everyone who registered so you guys can absorb all of this again, rewind to your favorite parts and whatnot. So thank you so much for everyone who came, and have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you so much, Jenny.
Thanks, everybody. Great to see you all.